Black lives matter worldwide till the end of time. We rising up. Can't nobody stop us. The love we got colossal. We rising up. White supremacy, your throne's about to topple. We rising up.
So the Young Women's Initiative really grew out of a response to My Brother's Keeper that the Obama administration put forward. During our town hall hearing, when young people were speaking about what it is that they were experiencing, her office got to see and learn from these young people and said, okay, let's sit together and figure out what a Young Women's Initiative could look like. And so the Young Women's Initiative was really a partnership between philanthropy, government, and community, as well as researchers, to be able to name what are the practices, policies, resource allocation, and research that girls of color, cis and trans youth need in order to, again, thrive. What are ways we need to address this, and particularly for girls ages 12 to 24. Oftentimes, girls no longer receive services after 18 years old. And so it was important to be able to see them through to 24. Through that process, the Young Women's Advisory Council, which was the core group of the Young Women's Initiative, those were the young people who were expected to be at the table, advocate, also expected to okay the recommendations. And so through the Young Women's Advisory Council, that consisted of young people 12 to 24, as well as trans young people and non-binary young people. And it was in the middle of one of the groups, and I was sitting in on this one in particular, where a young woman of trans experience, young Black woman, started to develop tears in her eyes, right? Her eyes started to well up. And, you know, I asked her, does she want to talk? And she said yes. And for her, when we stepped out into another room, what she was experiencing in the space was that she really felt like, as we're talking about reproductive rights and sex ed, that her experience in school isn't being reflected, and that she's scared or ambivalent to speak up because she doesn't want the cis gaze, right? She's a woman of trans experience, and her puberty looked different. What she does want, though, so we sat with that, right, of, you know, how we create an environment where everybody's experiences, you know, are valued and seen, and everybody has a chance to speak about them. And what she talked about is, I don't want to be separate from the girls in this group, but I also want a separate space for trans youth. And through that process, we were able to then speak to other trans youth and learn that, you know, there were a number of things that were coming up that were stopping them from coming to the groups. One of the things in particular that came up was, you know, many trans young people didn't have their identity changed legally. And so while, you know, their dead name, which is the name they were given and they consider it to be a dead name, is still on their ID, even on their ID, you know, their sex wasn't changed. And so that stopped them because you had to show ID coming into city council. Another thing that stopped them was there was security. There's always a police presence. And for many young women of trans experience, they have to protect themselves, whether it is that they're protecting themselves from everyday transphobia, or they're just trying to get home and the neighborhood they live in is too dangerous. There was a young person, you know, who pulled me aside and said, I want to come to the steering committee meeting, and, you know I should be there, but where am I going to put my knife? We took it serious, that consideration is serious, because by the time you're a young person carrying a weapon, it is because you don't feel safe. And so we understood that without judgment, that they were clearly doing what they felt they needed to do to preserve their own life. And so, you know, in that vein, we really work with young people so that, you know, they are seen and they are experiencing a space where their visibility matters, their presence matters, and their issues matter, and that they weren't going to be judged for that.